Hello, I'm Kaiser, and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author, and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today I will be doing my January wrap-up. In January, I read 6 books and DNF'd 2 books. Excluding the DNFs, they totaled 1,389 pages, with an average of 301 pages per book and 45 pages per day. There should be chapters marked so you can easily skip around. The first book I read in January was The Paladin of the Night by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. This is the second book in the Rose of the Prophet series. It is a fantasy novel. The description says, "The great war of the gods means nothing to the proud people on the mortal plane, until Akhran, the wandering god, decrees the union of 2 mighty, feuding clans. Though the families are fierce warriors, they are few in number. Even the marriage of Cardan and Zora is not enough to overpower the strength of the invading army or prevent the imprisonment of their peoples. Now with Cardan and Zora mysteriously missing, seeming cowards who hid from certain defeat, the 2 clans have lost all hope of ever again seeing their beloved open skies. But Prince Cardan and Princess Zora, aided by the wizard Matthew, have been given another mission. A mission that at first seems less useful than counting the many grains of the desert sands, but soon proves to be of far more lasting importance." 4 stars. As I said back in December with regards to the first novel, this is a fantasy with a more Arabian Nights style setting, and it may well be extremely culturally offensive. I don't know one way or another, so please keep that in mind for both this and the next review. Setting aside that potential problem, since this is a fantasy novel, I'm going to review it as if this is not a reflection, accurate or not, of any real-life culture, and simply review it on its own merits. As indicated by the increased star rating, I liked this one better than the first book. The Will of the Wanderer felt like a lot of setup without much real plot to me, and this felt a lot more like we were doing something. It was fairly entertaining. It did have some drawbacks. Zora is generally portrayed as a very strong character who won't be pushed around by anyone, and I felt like this book made her smaller. She loses a lot of agency as she's pushed around by the priests of Akhran, and it made me feel a little uncomfortable. By contrast, Matthew really got to shine in this book. He was struggling a lot with his faith, but he also started fighting for himself and the people he cared about, and I liked seeing that. Overall, I liked this one. After that, I finished up the trilogy with The Prophet of Akhran, also by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. The description says, "As the great war of the gods rages, it seems as though the terrible Kar, god of reality, greed, and law, will emerge the victor. Even the immortals have abandoned their mortal masters to join the battle above. Trapped without their immortal servants on the shore of the Curtain Sea, Cardan, Zora, and the wizard Matthew must cross the vast desert known as the Sun's Anvil, a feat no man has ever performed. Like the legendary Rose of the Prophet, the nomads struggle to survive the journey. If they succeed, they will face more than combat with the enemy, for the Emir's hardened warriors are led by Ahmed, the fiercest of men, and Cardan's brother." 2 stars. This book was fine, okay? I liked it well enough nearly all the way through. They continued to do some things with Zora that made me uncomfortable, but despite making me nervous, they never crossed the line too far. I will say that Zora, Cardan, and Matthew kind of took a back seat in this one as they spent nearly the entire book traversing the desert, which is not the most compelling story. But we popped over to the Jinn and to Ahmed often enough to keep things interesting, and enough happened while crossing the desert that it wasn't painfully dull. And then it ended. Or, more accurately, it didn't end. I've said for a couple of books that it felt like the author just got bored and stopped, but I'm not sure any book could ever feel more like that than this one. It was such an infuriating ending that I wanted to throw the book across the room by the time I was done. Absolutely would not recommend this series to anyone. It had some neat ideas, but it didn't do enough with them, and it landed so flat it hurts. Third, I listened to You Asked for Perfect by Laura Silverman. This is a romance/coming-of-age novel. The description says, Ariel Stone has spent his life cultivating the perfect college resume. First-chair violinist, dedicated volunteer, active synagogue congregant, and expected valedictorian. He barely has time to think about a social life, let alone a relationship, until a failed calculus quiz puts his future on the line, forcing Ariel to enlist his classmate, Amir, as a tutor. As the two spend more time together, Ariel discovers he may not like calculus, but he does like Amir. When he's with Amir, the crushing academic pressure fades away, and a fuller and brighter world comes into focus. But college deadlines are still looming, and adding a new relationship to his long list of commitments may just push Ariel past his limit. 3 stars. There wasn't necessarily anything wrong with this book, but I wasn't wild about it. Some of that is expectations. Largely, I think, due to the name, I thought Ariel was going to be dealing with impossible expectations put on him by his parents and maybe his school. But with one notable exception, that just wasn't the case. Everything he felt like he had to do was entirely pressure he put on himself. In fact, his parents more than once tried to coax him into dialing it back. Mostly, this book is just kind of tough to read. Ariel wasn't really being put under pressure by others, but his feelings very much reflect those of people who are. Way back when, I was rather forcibly entered into the IB program at my school. For those not familiar, it's kind of an advanced placement track, but with additional expectations. Thankfully, I got out of that before things got too intense, but several of my friends stuck with it from 6th grade all the way through 12th, and it was brutal. So I know people who had very similar experience to those described in this book. It was also very frustrating because no one seemed to be doing their job in looking out for him. Like I said, his parents try to convince him to take breaks or lighten his load a few times in the book, but every time he responds with something like, "I can't, I'm busy, and this is too important," and they immediately back down. I get that Ariel is nearly an adult and that college is, theoretically, very important, but his parents still should have pushed back harder on making sure he didn't tear himself apart for something that could never be as important as he was making it out to be. I didn't love this one, but it wasn't a bad book. Just know that it involves an insane amount of academic pressure, so if that's not good for you, let this one go. Then I finally finished the Anne of Green Gables series by reading Rilla of Ingleside by L.M. Montgomery. This is a historical fiction and also a war novel, I guess. The description says, Anne's children were almost grown up, except for pretty, high-spirited Rilla. Rilla wasn't yet 15, and she was still looking forward to her first dance and her first kiss. But undreamed-of challenges awaited irresponsible Rilla when the happy world of Ingleside was endangered by a fearful, far-off war. Rilla must join her courageous family in a dramatic struggle that would change her life and leave Rilla no longer a girl, but a proud woman. 3 stars. Once again, if you like the series up to this point, I don't see any reason you shouldn't like this one. It's fine. There were a couple of things that really irritated me in this book, but both of them are spoilers, so I can't really get into them. I mean, one of them, Montgomery, has been threatening since Anne of Ingleside, so the degree to which it can be called a spoiler is debatable. But still, if you want to know my thoughts on this, you're just going to have to wait and see if I do a full review. The 5th book I read was The Postman by David Brin. This is a post-apocalypse novel. The description says, He was a survivor, a wanderer who traded tales for food and shelter in the dark and savage aftermath of a devastating war. Fate touches him one chill winter's day when he borrows the jacket of a long-dead postal worker to protect himself from the cold. The old, worn uniform still has power as a symbol of hope, and with it he begins to weave his greatest tale, of a nation on the road to recovery. 3 stars. So, this is one of those books I found at my local thrift store and was surprised to learn was a book before it was a movie. I think The Postman is generally not a well-liked movie, but I like it, so I wanted to read the book. This is one that I feel a little wobbly about how much I like it. For the most part, it's a story about hope and doing what you can to make the world a little better. That aspect is pretty well done, and I enjoyed it. The biggest problem is that it leans a bit on the myth of a loving and equal America that just doesn't exist. And it kind of loses me when it leans on that a little too much. It doesn't really happen often, but it is there. On the other hand, this is kind of a sci-fi novel, so Gordon's America literally isn't the same place as our America. Like, they invented legit AI in 1995. That's how different it was. So even when they talk about the country as this grand place, you can kind of pretend that they made it more like that before everything went to shit. And it makes it slightly less eye-roll worthy. Incidentally, if you've seen the movie, just know that it never met the book. I told someone that it felt like someone read the first 3 chapters and thought, I should make a movie of this, and then never finished the book. There is very little overlap. I didn't love this, but I did enjoy reading it, and if you have even a passing fondness for the film, despite them being so different, I would still kind of recommend giving this a read. Then the last book I finished was The Boyfriend List by J.L. Wire. This is a romance novel. The description says, high school is about to get complicated for Megan Murphy, the quiet, nerdy girl who wears science-themed graphic t-shirts, posts videos about frogs, and likes to hang out in the school library reading books. The shy, awkward girl with 2 left feet who is prone to having monumentally embarrassing accidental mishaps. Something Megan blames on her last name, Murphy, as in Murphy's Law, the adage that states anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And Megan's biggest Murphy's Law mishap of all? The boyfriend list. A secret list of the names of all the boys she has ever had a crush on. A list she creates in a moment of feeling sorry for herself because she feels like she's the only girl in school who has never had a boyfriend, has never been kissed, has never found that special someone who sees her and not the awkward, weird sister of her older, very popular brother and star pitcher of the varsity baseball team, Braden. Megan doesn't realize it yet, but that dreaded Murphy's Law she feels cursed with may just give her what she has always wanted. And it all begins with an accidental hallway collision into Grayson Ramsey, her best friend's very cute older brother, a wayward, half-eaten apple core that hits Christian Alexander in the back of the head at lunch, and a lost boyfriend list. The list that includes the names of both Christian Alexander and Grayson Ramsey. The list she swears she put in her backpack, but absolutely, positively cannot find. The list that suddenly appears taped onto every locker and on every wall at school the next morning. The list that changes everything. 3 stars. It was fine. It felt kind of like The Kissing Booth meets To All the Boys I've Loved Before, but it didn't feel like it was stepping on the toes of either of those so hard that it wasn't its own thing. I do wish it hadn't name-dropped The Kissing Booth, though. That kinda threw me. I think my biggest complaint would be that these are high school students, but the inciting incident requires Megan to act in a way that feels a lot more middle school. I don't think a lot of high schoolers make lists of boys they like and title them with their name in bubbly letters, but I'll admit it's been a while. The stakes also felt a little low. Sure, things are a bit awkward the day the list is posted everywhere, but the faculty immediately takes it all down, and the only person who really gives her any trouble about it is a girl that's into the boy she fake dates. While I was reading that, my brother and I started listening to Hero by Perry Moore. This is a superhero novel. The description says, the last thing in the world Tom Creed wants is to add to his father's pain, so he keeps secrets. Like that he has special powers, and that he's been asked to join the League, the very organization of superheroes that spurned his dad. But the most painful secret of all is one Tom can barely face himself. He's gay. But becoming a member of the League opens up a new world to Tom. There he connects with a misfit group of aspiring heroes, including Scarlet, who can control fire but not her anger, Typhoid Larry, who can make anyone sick with his touch, and Ruth, a wise old broad who can see the future. Like Tom, these heroes have things to hide, but they will have to learn to trust one another when they uncover a deadly conspiracy within the League. To survive, Tom will face challenges he never imagined. To find happiness, he'll have to come to terms with his father's past and discover the kind of hero he really wants to be. I didn't finish this one. It wasn't bad, exactly. There were some things that I thought didn't make sense within the world of the book, like a simulator that's used to test would-be League recruits that reacts to Tom's powers exactly the way real life would, despite no one really knowing what exactly his powers do, but those were fairly minor and easy enough to overlook. Mostly the problem I and my brother had with this was that Tom made a lot of really stupid choices, and eventually it starts to get irritating. Part of me is still curious how it ends, but it relied too heavily on bad decisions to be a compelling plot. And yes, people make bad decisions, but some of these ones felt a bit too much. And then the last book I started was The Name of This Book is Secret by Pseudonymous Bosch. This is the first book in the Secret series. It is a mystery novel. The description says, "Warning, this description has not been authorized by Pseudonymous Bosch. As much as he'd love to sing the praises of his book, he is very vain, he wouldn't want you to hear about his brave 11-year-old heroes, Cass and Max Ernest, or about how a mysterious box of vials, the Symphony of Smells, sends them on the trail of a magician who has vanished under strange and stinky circumstances. And he certainly wouldn't want you to know about the hair-raising adventures that follow and the nefarious villains they face. You see, not only is the name of this book secret, the story inside is too, for it concerns a secret. A big secret." Again, I didn't finish it. There really wasn't anything wrong with this one, other than I'm not the intended audience. This is a middle grade, I think, though it honestly might be younger. The writing has a charming kind of whimsy, very reminiscent of Lemony Snicket, which I did enjoy quite a bit. Ultimately, though, I just didn't care all that much about the characters or the conclusion to the mystery. The book was fine, but eventually I realized I was only still reading it because I started it, and that just seemed like a waste of time. And that's everything I read in January. If you like this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!